Hello, and welcome to the Apologetic Dog, where it's our heart's desire to contend for the gospel of grace. I just want to thank you all for your support, for liking the content, sharing the content, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And if you are interested in supporting the channel in other ways, please consider being a YouTube member or Patreon, where I spend about 20 or 30 minutes making content that you are interested about. And then obviously, Super Chat is a way that you can engage with live streams like today. And I actually want to show you another way that you can support the ministry. My wife, the Apologetic Dame, she has been working hard with making T-shirts, things that are just exciting. She has that creative eye. And so please check out the Apologetic Dog website. We have a link in the show notes below where you can check out hoodies like this that she's been working on. So with that being said, I have with me today Dr. James White. Hey, long time no see.
Yeah, it's been forever, like days.
Yes, and everybody should know, but we just got done speaking at the War of the Worldviews conference. You, along with Dr. Jason Lyle and Eli Yala and Dr. Marcus, y'all did a lot of the heavy lifting, and I was able to kind of just relax and interview y'all as we could squeeze y'all in there.
Yeah, I thought it went really well. It was a good location, and though I have to admit, I wonder about the church a little bit there. That wasn't their church; they were just renting the facility.
Yeah,
because when you have a box full of earplugs at the door when you go into the sanctuary, and then there's a warning about loud sounds and flashing lights may impact some people. Yeah, I doubt they're using the Trinity hymnal during the service there.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Well, it was an awesome facility in terms of just the aesthetic and plenty of space. I'm really good friends with Tim Tant, and so I heard you say they're a glutton for punishment. They're already working on the conference for next year, so I can't wait to see what they cook up. And I know that with Apologetics, it's going to be laser focused in the cults, and so like I said, I can't wait to see what they get going.
Don't know anything about the cults. Dr.
White, before we dive in,
yes, missionaries or anything like that. No.
yeah, you're new to that. Before we dive in, I had to head out early because you kind of interacted with a liberal, we'll say, and I just want you to know that I am super excited to listening to how that conversation unfolded.
Yeah, afterwards, I had a little trouble seeing who was still there, and Eli moved around a little bit. I knew he was still there. He got a question in. Now, I eventually found Jason and his little girlfriend there. And I'm like, all right, Jason, took you long enough. High IQ, slower on the social scale there, I was married at 19. Come on, I knew what I wanted. Anyway, so they stuck around too, and I spent a few minutes talking with them afterwards, and Jason was like, when he mentioned Noah, I just about jumped out of my seat. I figured you would. But Eli was just like, this guy is a master of equivocation, and of course progressivism is. I don't call it liberalism. I used to when I was younger, but liberal means someone looking for freedom and things like that. These folks aren't looking for freedom. They're looking to crush all opposition. So the fact that you can sit there and say, I don't know if Jesus' body was in the tomb or not, but we celebrate the risen Christ. Something's going on there as far as the abuse of language, and being leftists as they are, they abuse language right, left, and center. So I think the main value will be that people see that I managed to answer some of the audience questions and press him enough that I think most people, if they wanted to, by the end of the evening, were like, "Oh, okay, I get it." that guy doesn't actually say what he means. He uses language differently. It's like, yeah, basically. So, yeah, but he was operating on the smaller Pauline canon, and so the pastoral epistles aren't, there's all the forged documents and all that kind of fun stuff. That, hey, let's just be honest, that's what people are going to run into when they go to your local university, your local community college. That's what you're going to get. So you better be ready for it.
And did I hear you on the Divine Line talk about how you got a very strange question asked you? It's almost offensive that they were asking about, what are you going to do when your grandkids, one of them ask you a certain question?
Yeah, it was one of the women from his group. And you could just tell she is the quintessential Karen. If your kid caught a home run ball, she'd run over and try to take it from him. Yeah, it was exactly what you'd expect from the leftist women. It's all about empathy and emotion, and it's like, no, that is not how you show love in any way, shape, or form. You do not affirm people in self-destructive behavior to show love. And if they're threatening suicide, it may be that behavior that's the reason, and no, they just can't think of that kind of stuff. It's maddening.
Yes, well, I want to remind our audience that we have a super chat goal. If you would like to ask your hard questions, I'll direct them to Dr. White, or if you just want to show support in the live chat, we would appreciate that. Dr. White, at the War of the Worldview conference, you didn't have a debate, you had a discussion, but we have debate number 200 in just a couple of days. And so you will be debating against Dale Tuggy. He will be defending the statement, John 1 is not Trinitarian, so he's taking the affirmative in that. And you will be taking the negative, trying to show that John 1 is about the Trinity. I mean, is that kind of weird to say it in that way?
Yeah, well, look, all Dale was trying to do was, he says, you're always on the defensive. Let's let you be on the defensive, but I'm still on the offensive. I'm in reality, I'm doing the positive side, but I have to go second. So it's a little bit. I mean, I would love to see him. What it should have been, honestly, when you think about it, is the thesis should be John 1 is Unitarian, because then
Exactly.
he'd be defending a positive statement. But he came up with it. I'm like, whatever. We know what we're going to be doing. I know what he's going to say. He knows what I'm going to say. Well, let's put it this way. He should know what I'm going to say. And he might surprise me, but I don't expect that he will. And I've certainly talked about all this stuff forever. I preached on it recently. If you really want to be prepared, you could be, but we'll see.
Dr. White, before we dive in, because I want to talk about some of the inner workings, if you will, of the prologue of John, my wife, she actually wanted to make an impact on this historic debate, round 200. So I want to let you know that our good friend Jerry Duckworth, a.k.a. the Twitchy Theologian, he has already bought one of these historic shirts. And so I just want to let everybody know that check out theapologeticdog.com, where you can get some of this awesome merch, where Dr. White has almost accomplished 200.
Yeah, we've got to have one. Got to have one for Dale. You don't expect him to go buy one. You're gonna have to. We have to give him one, and so that would be good to do at the beginning of the debate to make everybody happy.
Yes. Well, hey, as we are talking about your 200th debate, you and I, we did an interview, like I said, just a few days ago at the last conference. We talked about some of your highlights through the years. So I will be releasing some of that content to the membership first, and then everybody will get to see those interviews over time. So Dr. White, help us understand what to expect in this debate. Like you were already saying, you already know somewhat what he's going to say, and he knows a little bit what you were going to say, but what is this debate going to hinge around when we look into John's prologue?
My gut feeling, having watched his presentations, he's done a couple of presentations on this. My gut feeling is, well, I can tell you directly, my presentation will be purely exegetical. Basically, I'll have the Greek text on the screen, and I will have boxes that appear and disappear as I talk about various elements of the exegesis. And as I go through the key materials, as I look at the relationship of John 1:18 to 1:1, I will bring in 1 John chapter 1 because of the parallel terminology that John uses there. He expects his readers to make those connections. And so it's going to be purely exegetical. Dale's presentation is primarily historical, and it's primarily based on asking the same questions. Is there one God here? Is there two gods here? What is the Logos? Who is the Logos? Did Logos pre-exist? The Sabellians said this. Some Unitarians have said this, and basically his thesis is going to be that the Trinitarian understanding of the prologue doesn't come about until really after Nicaea, more like around Constantinople. And the problem is he has said numerous times, and he knows, the documentation for the beliefs in the early church is fragmentary. I mean, there are some people you got a fair amount of information from Tertullian and stuff like that. But for a lot of people, you're operating on citations by somebody else, fragmentary works where stuff's missing. We don't know what it said. No one ever quoted it. And then all sorts of folks who wrote, and we don't even know what they wrote, what they said, anything like that. And so it's open to all sorts of different interpretation. I can give a different interpretation than he does, and I can emphasize these sources. He emphasizes those sources. And so it's, you can fill a lot of time with it. And he's going to be saying, well, the Logos is an attribute of God. It's God's wisdom. And so God's wisdom became flesh. But he's not going to want to tell us what that means, because how does an attribute become flesh? How does an attribute know that it personally existed? Is an attribute personal? Does an attribute recognize?
That's Proverbs chapter 8, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he does make that connection, obviously. But how does something that was impersonal become personal in the incarnation? Though he doesn't really like that term incarnation either. And so he doesn't really explain how wisdom could be with God, but isn't personal. And he does do it's a personification. Wisdom's being personified in Proverbs chapter 8. Okay, it's being personified. It's not a person. So how can Jesus say in John 17:5, glorify me with the glory which I had with you in your presence before the world was? Can attributes speak personally and use personal pronouns? Because he admits that's just a personification. It's a mechanism. It's not actually the idea that wisdom is a divine person. He can't have wisdom as a divine person. Because now that's getting way too close to what we've been saying all along. So he's not going to go there. And so he's going to talk about Logos Christology, and he's going to talk about various views in the early church. And I'll be honest with you, I've sort of been fairly straightforward in telling him, you're going to lose most audiences. He gave these presentations at Unitarian things, and he tries to throw some humor in once in a while and make it a little bit more interesting. But the fact of the matter is, it's dry as 4-day-old pizza that's been left out, and, on the counter. It's just not. There's nothing there, and I'm going to be giving a hopefully very animated but exceptionally biblically based presentation and argument. And if all he's going to do is put people to sleep with a discussion of Logos Christology in the 2nd century, it's not going to go real well. But I've often wondered exactly who Dr. Tuggy's debating for. And if all he's concerned about is a core group on his side, well, maybe that's enough. I don't know.
So obviously you're way prepared for this, and you've always pointed out how no one has ever seen God, the only Son, who is at the Father's side. He has made him known. So this is kind of that bookend we were talking about. So is this really important for your case in developing verse 1, would you say?
Yeah, I'm going to walk through, 1 through 3 and make observations and note where there are questions. How do we identify exactly what this is referring to? Does John give us this information later on? He does, and he primarily does in verse 18. And then I'm going to put them both up, and I'm going to show the connections. I've already done the graphics. The connections between this part of this verse and that part there. And, he may, and in fact, I think he will dispute the reading of theos and homogeneous theos. And that, so I might, that's what tonight and tomorrow is about. I might go ahead and include, certainly thought about including graphics from both P66 and P75, maybe Sinaiticus and Vaticanus as well, showing that they all the early witnesses to this text say the same thing. Well, they say theos. There's differences between them as to whether it's homogeneous theos or just monogenes theos. So whether it's articulate or not. But anyway, I get my gut feeling is, if he's wise, he's not going to try to argue that point. He's normally just sort of. In fact, it's interesting, in his previous presentations, he has not considered anything past verse 14 as being overly relevant. So if he does take time on 18, it's because he's been listening to me enough to know that he has to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think he wants to do textual criticism with me, because he knows I'm extremely comfortable with that and have a lot of background and experience in it. And so I don't think he wants that coming into cross-ex or anything like that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm going to, emphasize what is found there in verse 18.
Right.
And the fact that this identifies. So in John 1:1, when we say, and the Word was with God, we say that's the Word was with God the Father. Well, John 1:18 makes that very plain. No one has seen the Father at any time. The monogenes theos, the unique God who is in the bosom of the Father, he has made him known. So there, by using the term Father rather than God, noticing God at any time, the monogenes known. So that's what the Logos has done. The Logos is and right there when it says he is in the bosom of the Father. That's the same thing as he is pros ton theon in John 1:1. And so you have relationship pre-incarnation between the Logos and theos, but then you have the Logos being identified as homogeneous theos, the unique God. And he is the one who makes him known. He is the one who exegetes him. And it's beautiful stuff. And it does strike me that even far too many Christians, when they deal with John 1:1, they don't do so in the light of verse 18.
Exactly.
They're not familiar with it. It may be because there's some people are hesitant because of the textual variant, and so they, if there's a textual variant, I don't necessarily want to go there. I don't really feel comfortable with that. Things like that. But I did just recently write an article on that text for the Ezra Institute. I'm not sure if I assume it's on the website. I wasn't sent a link or anything to check it out, but certainly I addressed this person.
Now, you mentioned Dale doesn't really go past verse 14. Now, you've emphasized in verse 1, the Logos is kind of this attribute of wisdom. So what does his view say that this attribute, impersonal attribute of wisdom taking on flesh? Like, to me, that doesn't even make sense in my mind. So how does he try to spin it as a Unitarian?
Well, that's just it. I'm sort of looking forward to finding that out too, because
you're going to find out just like we are.
find out like you all did, because he's been very vague on the nature of this incarnation in his comments. He's more comfortable reading from intertestamental books that personify wisdom and stuff like that than he is doing exegesis and saying, actually, John is communicating this. Being an analytical philosopher, he's much more comfortable with possibilities. It might be this, it might be that. He doesn't like to come to firm conclusions other than whatever we're talking about, it's not the Trinity. That's one firm conclusion that he would have. But that's my question. How does the Word become flesh? And if the Logos is just another way of saying the attribute of wisdom, how does that become enfleshed? How does that dwell like in a tent among us, which is what verse 14 says? And we beheld his glory, not its glory. And so has it gone from being an it to a his at that point? But before then, it's an attribute of God. I mean, could God's omnipotence become flesh? Could God's aseity become flesh? Could God's omniscience become flesh? What would any of that look like? It doesn't really make sense at all. But if the Logos is eternal, John 1:1a, and in relationship with the Father, and is as to his nature deity, if he is the monogenes theos of verse 18, who is able to perfectly reveal the Father, to make the Father known, because he has eternally been in fellowship with the Father, at the Father's right side, in the bosom of the Father, then it makes sense. I don't think the Unitarian reading does.
So these are some more basic questions to his position. I know y'all are at least beginning in John 1, but surely that allows you to go to 1 John chapter 1. And basic questions I have is, how would he understand things like Jesus' baptism, right? The Father, is speaking on high. The Son is being baptized by John. And the Holy Spirit, who is a he, right? He's a person. Is descending on him like a dove. So how does the Unitarian position make heads or tails of like Jesus' baptism?
Well, I don't think that we'll probably get into that, to be honest with you. If I do present other material from John, it's going to be simply a part of my supporting the assertion that this is the only consistent reading of the prologue, given what the rest of the Gospel of John says. So when we debated in Houston last year, I presented John 12:39 through 41. These things Isaiah said because he saw his glory and he spoke about him. I can connect that together because of the use of glory in 1 John chapter 1 and in John chapter 1 between verses 14 and 18. So I can bring those things in legitimately and make those connections. So I don't expect that we're going to be in Matthew 3 or any place
sure.
else in regards to, how does he make sense out of this? Going to be there. Why don't you ask him?
I might do it. I'll have a front row seat to, in my unbiased opinion, being a moderator and whatnot. So you did say, we need to make direct connections. So you did mention how 1 John chapter 1, directly related, same author, talking about the word of life. So are there any immediate connections that you want to say are, vital here to understanding, the Apostle John's apologetic to Christians?
Well, you can see in the text that which was from the beginning. So you have arche, just like you had in fact, I'm going to look at my own text here, if you don't mind, so that we have the Greek. So you have the same verb, was, the imperfect form by me, that which was arches from the beginning, what we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes. And so you have the reality of the incarnation in verse 14. Truly became flesh, was not just a phantasm. This was part of the anti-docetic polemic that John includes in his writings, because Docetism was already on the rise. What we have seen, in which our hands have touched, concerning the word of life. And so there's the Logos, there's tu logu, the word of life. He's the life and light of men, so on and so forth, and which our hands have touched. So again, very much something that the Docetics, the Gnostics, could not say. They could not, they're the ones that told stories about how Jesus and a disciple are walking along the seashore, and the disciple turns around, there's only one set of footprints. And unlike the really cheesy footprints in the sand poem that you can buy at a Christian bookstore, if we still had Christian bookstores.
Yeah.
So the Christian bookstore section at Amazon, okay, that says, well, that's when I picked you up. That's when I was carrying you. That's not what they were saying. There's only one set of footprints because Jesus doesn't leave footprints. He only seems to have a physical body. And so this is part of the anti-polemic proclamation found in 1 John chapter 1. And so then it talks about eternal life, which was ein pros ton patera. So which was with the Father and has been manifest to us. Well, you've got ein and you've got pros ton patera instead of pros ton theon. So again, the same identification of the one with whom the word is identified with the Father in verse 18 here in 1 John 1. There's other things that I will look at in verse 3 as well, but I don't want to give. And
I hope he is. You need a good challenge.
If he is already, it's going to be your fault. So,
Dr. White, you don't want your debate number 200 to be a cakewalk.
If it ends up being a cakewalk, that's okay. I'm not going to complain about that. But no, obviously, if Dr. Tuggy has 25 minutes and is going to have far more slides than I am, I'm just going to have maybe 10 at the most slides. Now they're going to have graphical boxes that appear and disappear and stuff like that. So maybe that counts as more. But mine's just honestly nothing but the Greek text. And I would assume his is going to be primarily citations from the intertestamental period and from church history, whether it be Origin or whatever. And I just don't know that he thinks through whether he's going to be able to keep an audience in that type of a context. But the people I'm debating for, they resonate with the Word of God. So that's my great advantage. Is this is a topic that we can fully flesh out from the text of Scripture, and should.
Yeah, so when he potentially brings up historic arguments, I don't feel like that's a good move because number one, there's division on that, and that's okay because we hold the Scripture as preeminent. But do you think that's particularly a good move to try to, spend a lot of time on his part going to church history?
Well, I don't know that he has anything else that he can do. Um, I mean that is the essence of his material, and so I just that's what he fills his time with. That's if you were to do something different, it would be completely out of character. It would be something completely new. And so, I don't know what else he can possibly do.
Yeah, so we have a good question. I'll post it here in a moment because I do remember this in one of your previous debates. Would the Granville Sharp rule come into play? Now, I know in the debate where you brought this up in 2 Peter 1:1, and I'll bring that up here in a moment, but do you think that could be utilized in any way in this debate with Dale?
It's not in the prologue of John, so no.
Okay, yeah.
But metal, that would require me to, change what I'm doing and change the change the topic of the debate, basically. And I'm not going to do that. I'm very, very convinced that the text will win the debate for me, that I'm accurately handling it, fairly handling it in its original language, its original context, historically, so on and so forth. So I don't need to go anyplace else. And if I do go someplace else, that just diminishes the focus that I want to have. So even when I do talk about First John, that's same author, and it's the same context, the same terms, and it's just demonstrating that the interpretation that I gave initially is confirmed by the bookends in verse 18, and it's confirmed by the prologue in 1 John 1 as well.
Now, you did mention John 17 earlier, and to me, this would be a valid move because John chapter 1 is talking about the glory that the Logos, who took on flesh, in relation to the Father and so forth. And to me, this seems like you would show this interpersonal relationship before the foundation of the world, which John 1.
I will.
Right?
Yeah, I will. Again, it's the same author, same book. So it's supportive of my interpretation. But yeah, there is no question that John 17:5, again, glorify me, Father, together with yourself, with the glory which I had in your presence before the world was. So he would have to identify, this may be in the rebuttal rather than in the opening presentation, we'll see. But if he has presented the idea that the Logos is an attribute of God, then this is an attribute speaking in the first person, remembering pre-existence in the presence of the Father. This is one divine person speaking to another divine person. This isn't an attribute speaking to a divine person. And, he may say, well, I just see it differently. I think it's about the best he can come up with. But I got
an objection for you. Dr. White,
Yes.
Did you not know that Isaiah 42 says that God shares his glory with no one else? And so you Trinitarians make God sharing his glory.
Yeah, and I used that text last year in Houston as one of the evidences of the fact that Jesus is identified as Yahweh consistently. by the New Testament writers and in light of the Old Testament witness as well. So yeah, if he wants to go there, that's fine. I'm going to try to stay focused on the prologue of John. If he runs off from there and is taking most of his time elsewhere, then I might have to think about it. But we'll see.
So yeah, you're willing to, if he wants to shift gears to, not call him back necessarily to John 1, but anywhere he wants to go, it's Trinitarian through and through from Genesis to Revelation. So hey, well, I can't wait.
John, even Bart Ehrman says that John's point is to prove that Jesus is a divine being. He says that's what separates him from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I disagree, but if Bart Ehrman can recognize what the purpose is, then everybody else should too.
Now, Dr. White, this is debate number 200, technically so, but I just want people to know you're not throwing in the towel after 200. In fact, you got some more debates cooking in February coming up.
Well, I think you'd like me to. You and Eli and all you young guys, get the old man off the stage now. We'll take it from here. No, I'm not hanging up the towel quite yet. Once I get to the point where I can't hear well enough, I'm like, I don't have my hearing aids in right now. But if I can't hear the other guy well enough, if I can't think fast enough to talk on my feet, if I can't keep my time any longer, okay, then it's time to hang it up. But no, I'm going to be at the big Gospel Truth thing with you next February, Lord willing, anyways. And unlike the rest of you who will be flying, well, you may drive, I'm not sure, but most people will be flying in. It's going to be tough. I can get there in 2 days, but those are long days. They really, really are. They're a little dangerous. So if anybody would like to donate a new truck to pull the RV with that has all that fancy driving stuff that keeps you from driving off the road and you fall asleep, that'd be great. That'd be wonderful. But yeah, I'm going to be debating the Unitarian that a friend of mine that's with the ministry, when he found out I was doing this debate, he says, oh man, the Unitarians are really excited about this, because for the Unitarians, Dale Tuggy is their philosopher, but this guy is their Bible guy. And from what I understand, I haven't had a chance to start looking into his background and stuff, but what I understand is he teaches at a Methodist college as a Unitarian. That tells you a whole lot more about the Methodists than anything else, honestly. But yeah, we're going to... The problem is I was given the format, and it's probably at least an hour shorter than what Dale and I will be doing. So it's going to be... We're not going to be able to get into almost anything. And it's going to be shotgun your verses. They shotgun their verses. You try to get to as many of theirs as you can get to, and they try to get to as many as yours. And I wish it was longer. And I have requested that the folks in charge there try to find me a second debate on Roman Catholicism to do, so as to help justify the expense and the time of driving from Phoenix to Dallas and back again. That's, a lot of wear on this and everything else. So yeah, we're definitely going to, keep going. And there are other topics I would like to see arranged. But I'll be honest with you. These days, there's just so much else going on in the world, so much else going on in the church. It's hard to make long range plans when you're involved with all the stuff I'm involved with.
Dr. White, it just occurred to me, you're right. These are going to be shorter debates. That means I only have an hour and a half to grill the Flower Patch Kid himself. That makes me sad. I wish I had more time.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I actually asked. He was saying, I think he said initially it said 10-minute opening statements. I said that's not even really worth the travel. I think I got it up to 15, maybe 20. But yeah, that for me is problematic. If you don't have enough time to actually truly get into cross-examination, then you're not really doing a debate, in my opinion. You may get people to show up because they want to see these people bashing each other's brains in, but it really doesn't do much more than that.
Yeah. So as you pass 200 debates and you're doing your victory laps, are there any other topics that interest you in, like you said, discussing? I know you said maybe another Roman Catholic debate, but are there any other things that you see, yes, that is worth kind of pursuing, talking about for the next generation?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff for the next generation. I would like to find responsible Roman Catholic apologists to deal with the Marian dogmas. There are some very irresponsible people that I'm not sure if it was with you that I described it this way, but there are some people that I know of online who could prove the Immaculate Conception from a Denny's menu. They really could. Look, there's an M here, and it's at a bit of an angle, and I mean, and I'm not making people say, "Oh, you're overdoing it." No, I'm not. there are people that are really into the Mary stuff, okay, and they're really weird. So, but no, I one of the topics that I want to try to get to do some work on and to arrange a debate on is the Second Council of Nicaea.
Ah, yes.
Because, yeah, it's extremely relevant to both Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism because both consider it an ecumenical infallible council. In my opinion, it's very obvious that it is far more important to Eastern Orthodoxy because that's where veneration of icons was defended. The iconoclastic controversy was concluded allegedly at the Second Council of Nicaea in 787. I think there have been some books that have come out recently from the Orthodox side that smell of desperation. They really do. The arguments are so stretched and poor that I think they realize this is a tough area for us to deal with. And so there's certain people that I would like to challenge to debate on that, but the only reason I haven't done it yet is my schedule just keeps filling up with life. It keeps filling up with church stuff. It keeps filling up with things that get in the way. And it almost seems like when I was younger, I could get through that stuff faster and get more writing done or preparation done, things like that. You get old and you start moving slow. Either that or it's just you're getting hit with a whole lot more. It's probably you're getting hit with a whole lot more, honestly. Just dealing with stuff in the church and church discipline issues. And it's a challenge.
Now, Dr. White, what is your message to young men that think that, getting into apologetics is so cool. I want to do debates. I want to do podcasts and all the things. What is some of your methods to either encourage or to pump the brakes on young aspiring men?
Well, as you know, I think that's why you're asking the question. I threw some cold water on you at one point. Yeah, when guys come up to me after
on the way to Arby's.
Okay. Yes, that's right. I remember that Arby's. In fact, that's making me really want to have Arby's. Thanks a lot. Now I'm hungry. There's an Arby's not very far from here either, so now I may end up jumping in the truck and eating something unhealthy. But anyway, Arby's isn't bad. Just leave the French fries off. Potato cakes are a lot of fun. They brought them back. Thank you. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, basically what I do is when young guys come up to me after they've watched a debate or something like that, they've been live in the audience and it's been pretty exciting. How do I get into apologetics? And I'll do the practical stuff. The practical stuff is these are the subjects that you need to be working on now and you need to master. So Greek, church history, systematic theology, logic, these types of things you need to, be doing serious work in. But then I'll just be perfectly honest with them and say straight up, I said, look, if you can do anything else in service to the Lord, do it. Because what you don't see standing here after a debate was the years and years of poverty and work that went into this beforehand. You don't see all that stuff, and you don't see the dangers, the spiritual dangers that apologetics presents. I've seen lots of people go apostate who were involved in apologetics because they didn't have a firm root within themselves. And so, yeah, I say, unless it's a fire in your bones, do something else. And they're shocked when I say that. But if I can talk them out of it, then they weren't called to do it in the first place. And if they are called to do it, then what they're going to hear me saying is, you need to be really, really serious about your preparation, what you're doing here. This is not a game. This is not just something that looks fun on debate night. There were hours and hours and years of preparation that went into allowing that debate night to take place.
Yes, because as I've talked with young men that get rattled easy, something that the apologetics realm presents is the constant counter arguments to Christianity. And if you don't have a firm grasp on the fundamentals and the sweet gospel message that Jesus is a perfect Savior that saves to the uttermost, well, you're really setting yourself up for failure and danger to be tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine. And so I will say, after your debate with Joe Heschmeyer, I remember talking to a young man he just came up to me and said, Jeremiah, I kind of just don't know what to think anymore. It just, you know what I mean? Like, you got someone that's new to the faith that just hears both gentlemen presenting their arguments. And he said, Jeremiah, I need some encouragement. And so what I did was we opened up our Bible right then at 12:05 after the debate, and I read Romans 5:1 to him, and I told him, I don't need a pope whispering in my ear, telling me how to understand this verse, how to have peace with God, and how I can stand justified in his sight by faith. And my point is, apologetics is not for the faint of heart. You know what I mean? I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, it's not. And, I would say that one of the dangers of being apologetically minded is that, as you sort of mentioned in passing, when you read the scriptures, your mind is always thinking about how could this be used by an opponent of the faith? How could this be used how can someone use this against me in a debate? That's always back there, and often it ends up being distracting. I think a lot of apologists don't make overly good preachers because that's all they can think about. They can't switch that off. I mean, some people would say that about me too. They would say that about me as well, but I do switch it off the majority of the time. Now, if it fits to help prepare the people, then I'll talk about it. But yeah, you got to be careful about that.
I laugh because I'm in that struggle. Like, I'm wired to think apologetically. And when I talk to Pastor Nathan Hargrave, one of my co-elders, he is the George Whitefield. He preaches passionately, exhorts the people. And, recently I preached on Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. Well, I'm trying to equip people how to handle argumentations, in the realm of baptism, right? But what's hard for me is I have to spend a lot of time thinking pastorally, to guard the people in life on life and applying application. I will say I was proud of Pastor Nathan because he preached on the opening verses of Cornelius in Acts chapter 10, and I told him this was his most apologetic sermon because he dealt with God-fearers, are they regenerate, and all these things. And I told him he did such a great job because, like you said, the passionate preachers aren't really apologists. They're not wired that way, and vice versa. But I will say you do a fantastic job of being able to stand in the pulpit and also preach to the saints.
Well, that's kind of you, but I think you're biased. I don't think much of my preaching skills. I mean, I do it. Like I said, I mentioned on the Dividing Line today, I preached the last 4 Sundays at Apologia before I left, and I have a feeling when I get back, I'm going to be doing a lot of preaching again. And so, yeah, I try to. I can't stop being who I am, and at Apologia, right. I mean, the name of the church, it's sort of expected, but still, I am far more comfortable as a teacher than a preacher. And so my best sermons, the ones that people like the most, are when I just open the text and, like I had a situation, I forget which one of those 4 sermons it was I did, but the first one, I found out, 8 hours before I was going to be preaching that I was going to need to step in. And we've always said at the church, hey, if I walk in the back door and somebody's puking their guts out and they're supposed to be preaching, great, I'll preach. And what will I do? I will probably, if I didn't bring my Greek text, I'll fire it up on my phone or iPad, or if I have it with me. And I will live translate a section, a chapter, half a chapter somewhere in Gospels, Paul, something like that, and then go back through and explain stuff, make application, say the closing prayer, and have the Lord's Supper. And that's not something that everyone can do. Most people who take Greek in seminary do not have the capability to just open a Greek text and live translate while standing in front of people without notes or things like that. But I took 7 years of Greek, taught it for years and years. If I can't read it now, oh well. And so people really tend to like that. They feel like they're really getting into the meat and potatoes of the text, and that's what I'm comfortable doing. And so a lot of my sermons are pretty much that, even when I have time to have notes. There have been some sermons where I had extensive notes and things like that, but vast majority of the time anymore, I just simply have the original language text and go from there.
Yeah, maybe one day. I would love to be someone that, like John Calvin, just preached from the text. And I'm a manuscript guy. I think it's my inexperience, and that's kind of the guardrails to just kind of keep me, focused on what needs to be said. And I was going to say, Pastor Nathan, he likes to still call me Saturday late afternoon to just give me a good little scare and remind me that I need to be ready in season and out of season. But I wanted to also tell people, when you were at 12.5, our debate weekend, I remember saying, hey, do you got, a passage that you're going to preach on yet we can put in liturgy and things? And you're just like, hey, I'm still, prayerful about that. And I remember how you began this sermon. You were like, after the debate with Joe Heschmeyer, you had a Roman young Catholic man come up to you and basically was like, give me a verse. How are we wrong, right? And you really took him to Romans 4, apologetically so, but you asked him about, the blessed man. But anyway, I'm saying that that's also what you preached on. So you kind of walked through Romans 4 into the grand conclusion of Romans 5:1. So I just thought, and you preached for like an hour. So, I mean, you threw some stories in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jeff and Apologia ruined me on that. When I was, I was at PRBC, Phoenix Reformed Baptist Church, 29 and a half years, and I'd never go over 45, 50 minutes at most. And now it's hard for me to keep it below an hour. I don't go as long as Jeff, but it is hard for me. Even when I think I'm going short, I get home and I look at the YouTube thing, and it was. I think one of the 4 sermons I did recently was 58 minutes. So I'm trying.
I tell people in Acts, Paul would preach till midnight. So if our sermons are about an hour, then that's pretty good.
Pope Francis told us last year that your sermon should not be any longer than 8 minutes long.
We have a question. Yes, yeah, and it's hard to hear those. It's hard to hear those things. Dr. White, we got a question from the twitchy theologian himself. He says, "Can I get you guys to sign my T-shirt?" Yes, I'll be there to grace you guys with my presence. I'm looking forward to seeing Jerry. He asked me to write the foreword to his book, Dr. White, so that was an honor to be able to do.
I get a lot of those requests, and I used to really make an effort to try to read stuff. I can't tell you how many books I read on long bike rides in the dark back when I was still able to do that safely back in the 20-teens somewhere. But anymore, I just say, look, if you can send it to me in electronic form, and I've got a trip coming up, and I'm not still prepping for stuff on the trip, then maybe I'll be able to use Speechify and listen to it. But there's a 99.8% chance I'm not gonna be able to do something like that, because I get a lot of requests for it.
Dr. White, that's my favorite way of reading. Now, if I'm in my office and I'm listening to Speechify or these programs, it feels like when I'm reading, along with it being read really, really fast, I scare people when I tell them how fast I listen to it. But I feel like I can go longer and I retain more. And then when I have to get out of my office after about 5 hours, I have to go touch grass and go get some exercise. I keep listening to, whatever I need to. And so I just feel like these, technology, these tools to be able to continue to learn has been really great. So, and I've always listened to you talk about exercising while also learning at the same time. So you got to be careful with that, but there is something to just engaging more of the senses.
That's true. I mean, I couldn't have read the vast majority of the books I've read over the past 15 years if it hadn't been for technology that would allow me to do so. And I mean, Speechify is fairly new. I was using all sorts of other stuff, including the Kindle keyboard, where it will read it to you. And then I would plug the earphone jack into my computer and I'd record it overnight. Sometimes those books would be 4, 5, 6 hours long. And I mean, that's not a very efficient way of doing it, but got it done. And I rode thousands and thousands of miles listening to books in that way. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to do it. It's not that I don't ride as much. I don't ride as much anymore, but I do so much more of the riding inside. It's a lot harder to do it that way. A lot harder to listen while inside than it is outside.
Well, Dr. White, we're so excited for debate number 200. This will be Thursday. It'll be a part of the pre-conference at 6 p.m. Now, I believe it's going to be recorded and then edited and hopefully, really nice, professionally done. And so I'm not sure which YouTube channel. I'm sure it'll be on Dale Tuggy's side being released. Do you know if you are going to be releasing a copy as well, or is it just on their side?
Oh, yeah. Both sides get the stuff. They were very concerned about that because he is really dependent on the slides. And if all you've got is a camera shot, you can't read the slides. And so they wanted to make sure before it was sent out to the public that the version that would be sent out to the public would have all the slides and the slides would be readable, which I understand. That's perfectly appropriate. Yeah.
Well, Dr. White, like I said, we are excited and we'll be keeping you in prayer. Thank you so much for all your hard work. And I know you've told me you kind of got to take it just a day at a time with all the stuff that is dumped on your plate, because I'll ask you from time to time, hey, you got this ready? And you're like, nope, not yet. About to get started on it. So we definitely will be keeping you in prayer.
I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it as well. And but that's only 2/3 of the way through my trip. I've still got. Well, actually, it's not even that. It's about halfway through. So yeah, it's going to be. Don't get home till the end of the month. So what's today? The 9th? Yeah, I don't get home till the end of the month. So
wow, nice long trip. Absolutely, and we will be praying for the RV, that it stays together and no leaks.
Well, yep, I did have a leak during the rain there, but nothing major. So if it's coming through a air conditioning vent, it's coming from the AC unit, and it's probably not going to damage much else. So we're okay.
All right. Well, hey, I look forward to seeing you, Dr. White, real soon.
We'll see you then. Thank you, sir.
All right. God bless. See you later. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in this evening. My time here, just being able to interview Dr. White, really just getting to chop it up, and then you all get to kind of just see that unfold in all of its many different directions. Also, I want to remind you, if you've benefited from the Apologetic Dog Ministry in any way, please like this video, this live stream, and share it with other people if you think it would benefit them. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do that. That really helps the algorithm. It helps me grow my ministry and be able to do apologetics, debate, and all those things. And something else that I really want to spend time in the apologetics is not being a negative ministry where I'm constantly debating and doing just polemics, but I want to give edifying content. And one way that I do that is through the membership and Patreon, where I spend time answering your questions, interacting with the things that you have to say. And I like to say, if you want to support the channel and it be more of a win-win, if you will, is check out the creativity of the apologetic dame, aka the babe of all babes, aka my wife, Allie Nortier. She has been designing a number of things on Bonfire, and if you go to theapologeticdog.com, you'll see a tab where you can check out that merchandise. And I will also say, she made a shirt for the conference coming up. Unfortunately, our t-shirt guy was not able to stock us with those, so these are going to just be on the website for a limited time, but it's pretty cool. You will have to definitely check that out. Well, with that being said, please, I'll pray that you have a good evening, and I look forward to seeing you next time.